Hey everyone, hope you are all doing great. Happy Friday. Hope you have some exciting plans for the weekend. Very excited today to have all of you join today to learn more about Jinja. So my name is Devin Champagne. I am the Senior Partner Manager here over at Simon Data. And today with me, I have Brant, the CEO and co-founder of Scalero. They're a premier lifecycle marketing agency with extensive experience in Simon Data. They've helped multitudes of our clients get their email set up properly, help them with their journeys and flows, and making sure that data is flowing properly throughout the Simon ecosystem to make sure our clients are getting the best personalization and marketing efforts for their downstream opportunities. We're here today to really dive deep into Jinja. Jinja is a code that we use in order to develop email templates inside of our platform. It has a lot of dynamic capabilities to it and customization. Brant and his team has built out a lot of complex email templates for our clients. So today, Brant is going to walk through a couple of examples and experiences that he has in Jinja. And then with that, I am also putting a link inside the chat right now where you can go ahead and actually click in that and follow along with us and write out some of the Jinja examples that we're going to walk through today. So feel free to use that link and follow along with us as Brant goes through and gives us a really exciting breakdown of Jinja and the capabilities that they've been able to build with it. So Brant, going to hand it off to you, rolling out the red carpet, and you are good to go.
Cool. Thanks, Devin. I think the link you just shared was probably just to me. Can people confirm that?
Yes. Yep. Hold on one second. There we go. Apologies.
Cool. I also shared the presentation. It should be viewable. There's going to be snippets in here that'll be helpful to copy and paste. Here on my screen, you can see two screens. On the left will be the presentation. I'll go through that. And then on the right is a Jinja live parser. That's where we can practice and work through things together. You are welcome to just watch and hear me talk for an hour if you'd like. If you want to join in, you're welcome to do that as well. That link that Devin just shared, that's where we'll be practicing. And you can grab some of these snippets and we'll get to this later, but you'll want to grab the YAML as well to follow along. And that'll be here in the presentation in that link. So let me know if you're having any challenges with access or anything like that.
And Brant, I'll also be monitoring the chat, so I'll follow in with any Q&As that may come up throughout the process.
Okay, cool. I can multitask. I'm talented. All right, so what is Jinja? Jinja is a web template engine, and web template engines are all over the internet, right? So basically what they allow you to do is they allow developers to define placeholders, variables in the template that you see on your device. And then those are actually replaced with actual values at runtime. So I have three screens here that are from Airbnb, and they're probably not using Jinja to render this, but you could. And so they have three different screens here, basically they're taking values from the back end and delivering this to the device that you see here. And a web template engine like Jinja helps make this experience possible. And then when you think about lifecycle marketing, this approach is going to be absolutely essential to delivering personalized emails. You want to send out an email to 1 million subscribers. You want all of those templates to look a little bit different and personalized per user. And a web template engine is what's going to drive that, like Jinja. I saw that open question and answered. Yeah, we'll paste that here. We'll get to it in like slide 3 or 4 here, and I'll pause and slow down at that time so everybody can get that YAML up and going. Okay, if that explanation didn't make any sense and you're looking for something a little bit more lifecycle marketing centric, this is what we're talking about here. So I have 2 different emails. They're the same template. Presumably you're sending out the same campaign. And the difference here is somebody on the left is getting this blue jacket email and somebody is getting this t-shirt email on the right. And really, it's just kind of three variables here that are powering these distinct emails here, right? You have the title name, you have the description, and you have the image here. And Jinja personalization allows one user who likes jackets to get this email, one user who likes t-shirts to get this email, and hopefully you're sending this out through the same campaign and you're just using some Jinja syntax to make this possible. Okay, so I think I'm gearing this presentation toward beginners, but if you're a little bit beyond beginners, I'm hoping there's at least a few nuggets in here that you find useful. For the beginner crowd who find Jinja maybe a little intimidating, you've probably used web templating engines in your careers, whether or not you've been aware of that. So there's a lot of them out there. Three popular ones are Jinja, Liquid, and Handlebars. And there's some marketing tools you've all probably used or heard of that are using those web templating languages. And even like the earliest days, you know, MailChimp was using merge tags 10, 15 years ago to power their email campaigns, right? You have like the pipe symbol, capital name, pipe symbol, and then it would take that name that you have on your subscriber list and merge that into the template. That's essentially a web templating engine that MailChimp kind of developed themselves. When comparing these three template engines, I think Jinja is quite nice. It can print variables. It can do control structures. It has advanced logic capabilities, and they have kind of this concept of template inheritance. While Liquid and Handlebars, they only offer some of these things, really. So I put up some caution signs for partial support and then no signs for like zero support. If we were all web developers on this call, you would say that all this power in Jinja is maybe a little too much power. The reason for that is web developers prefer doing most of their logic on the back end and then just displaying variables on the front end. But in lifecycle marketing, as probably most of you know here, you don't always have a lot of control around that back end and the data coming into your platform. So it's kind of really nice having lots of flexibility here. In this instance, flexibility is really desired. I see a really good question in the chat. How does Klaviyo's Django compare? Great question. Django is very similar to Jinja. It's the reason I didn't put it in here. So you could probably basically put Jinja and Django in the same column, and yeah, that's what Klaviyo uses. If you're on this call and you use Simon Data, obviously the Jinja will be really helpful. If you're using some other platform that's using Liquid, Handlebars, or Django, this is still going to be really helpful. Like I said, Django is almost identical to Jinja, and Liquid is pretty similar. Okay, so this is where we're going to follow along. So if you want, you can. The website is quantprogramming.com. Devin posted that in the chat, so you can open up that link. Devin just pasted all the YAML, so you can grab all of that as well. And what else? If you're not enjoying copying that YAML in the chat, you can also open up the presentation and scroll to slide 5 here to copy this. Post the links again. We can do that. Okay, so the live parser, I'm pasting that first. All right, presentation, I'm pasting second. And then I'll post the YAML one more time in case anybody didn't get that. What does YAML stand for? Good question. I'm not sure. Markup language, something markup language would be my guess. I'll explain what it does here. Christine cannot see the chat. Yeah, what can we do for Christine?
I posted it to her directly. You're good to go, Bram.
Okay, cool. Okay, cool. So what is this? So yeah, I'm not the best person to explain what YAML is. You can think of it similarly as like JSON, where maybe we're putting some test data into this web browser, and we're using that test data to kind of mimic your lifecycle marketing tool like Simon Data's backend. So this structure will allow us to write Jinja and populate those variables like it was being served to you from Simon Data. So you don't need YAML to render Jinja. We're just using it here in this exercise so that we can actually play around on this browser and do some exercises live. Cool. All right, so Jinja syntax, it's pretty straightforward. There's 3 types of delimiters. What is a delimiter? So it's a character that allows the renderer to be able to distinguish between text or HTML and your Jinja in this case, essentially. So there's 3 delimiters here in Jinja. Your double curly brace will just print a variable that's inside that curly brace. And then if you're trying to make a statement, you're trying to do some logic that is not printing a variable. You're doing curly brace, % on both sides. And then finally, something that I see probably our clients use least of is the commenting. So curly brace, hashtag, and you can get a comment in there. You can make HTML comments as well. I'm sure everybody here has seen those in content. The advantage of doing comments in Jinja rather than HTML is that these comments will disappear when you actually send it out, so it doesn't take any extra space in the email that you send out. So if you're worried about the number of characters you're sending out in your email, this is a better approach than HTML comments. All right, so basically we're going to go through these 3 things, right? We're going to go through delimit. We're going to go through printing variables. We're going to go through some statements that you can make and go from there. So we're going to start with just displaying variables. So if you have some experience in Jinja, this first part is going to be a little bit painful, but follow along. It'll get more interesting. If I take this snippet, contact favorite musician, the render is displaying Taylor Swift. Why is it doing that? Is basically I'm saying for this user, John Doe, their favorite musician is Taylor Swift. And the variable here is contact.favoritemusician. And that's, they call it dot notation. Basically, favorite musician is a key inside the dictionary contact. And so, you know, if you want to access that key, you're saying, give me the dictionary contact dot key favorite musician, and we're displaying that value Taylor Swift right there. That's pretty straightforward. Jinja, you can also set your own variables in your template. So I can set the variable my musician is Radiohead. You don't see anything here because we're not printing this variable. We're just setting this variable my_musician. So if I wanted to print that, I can do that here. All right, next slide. So always check if variables exist. Reason 1, you do not want an empty variable in your email. That's embarrassing. Reason 2, Simon Data or your ESP, they also do not want you do have an empty variable in your email, that's embarrassing. So this is probably one of the most overlooked things that I come across is people just not accounting for fallbacks. So this just requires a lot of discipline, being very detail oriented, going through the painstaking process of always having backups. So if I show an example here, I have this snippet here. Let's actually scale back. So let's say I didn't do a check and I just said, hi, contact first name, last name, comma. And I can see a question here. The white space, exactly. So this variable doesn't exist, right? It's not in our YAML. There's no definition for first name or last name. Jinja's default behavior is they're just going to display empty strings if the variable doesn't exist. So when your email goes out, yeah, that's going to look pretty ugly doing it like that. So a better approach is going to be checking if that variable exists, and then being just kind of conscious with the way that you structure your spacing in that. So here now I have a really pretty high comma, and I'm checking if that first name and last name exists. Now, this is a little verbose for me. I don't think that's like the prettiest way to write it. The way I would prefer doing this is you can also write in defaults into your Jinja. So you can say something like, hi, contact first name, if that doesn't exist, or there. So Jinja says, okay, first name doesn't exist, no problem. We're going to just display there. And then I'm doing the same for the last name here. Obviously, this is not going to always work if there's just no fallback that will ever possibly work for the variable that you're using, then you're going to want to go with that first route. All right, that's it on variables. So you already know how to print statements. It's pretty straightforward. Control structures, so there's two of them that are going to be most valuable here in lifecycle marketing: if statements and for loops. So both of these are essential for content personalization, and we'll go through both of them. So one thing that's nice about Jinja, and it's kind of in the Python network, I think people who are Python programmers would say the same, is it sounds a lot like natural language, right? It's very intuitive. So, if you just said this out loud, it would kind of render as you would expect it to. You're saying, hey, if my favorite musician here equals Taylor Swift, we're gonna display this text. If it doesn't exist, there's nothing going to be displaying here. So our favorite musician is Taylor Swift. We are displaying this string. What up, Swifty?
Hey, Brand, two good questions inside the chat too that I just don't know the answers to.
Yeah, so I see from Adrian, good question around the dashes. We're going to cover what those dashes do. They are very important. I want to cover that at the end, though. That's going to control white space. So that's why you see those so often, is because they strip out white space. All right, the other one, to populate a fallback field, is it best practice to put the or right within the Jinja field, or add the else after the desired field? Or does it matter? It's going to be personal preference for sure. So if we go back to that, it's basically, which do you prefer here? What's working better for you? I like this. This is just kind of less verbose to me, a little bit simpler. You can also do inline if statements. I think we cover that later. So if you needed to do something like hi, contact first name, if contact first name, else there, that's going to work as well. We'll cover that a little bit more later. All right, so we just did an if statement here. You can also introduce an else statement. So if contact favorite musician Taylor Swift, you see the string we just had. Otherwise, can you even be trusted will display. So if I changed on the back end who this user's favorite musician was and changed it to Bob Dylan, you're going to get the render, can you even be trusted? Because we're not satisfying this first condition. So now we're displaying the else statement here. Okay, this next one, you can also introduce an elif. So this is helpful if you have kind of multiple branches here of logic that you need to cover. So here, once again, I'm not relying on the YAML. I'm setting my own value to this variable, my musician, Nickelback. We're checking first, is my musician Taylor Swift? If so, what up, Swifty? Else, is my musician Nickelback? Gross. And then else, we're doing, can you even be trusted? So here, the variable equals Nickelback. So we're gonna be displaying gross in this standpoint. Hope I didn't offend any Nickelback fans here. All right, cool. So we jumped ahead on this. Yeah, another way, a less verbose way of writing this is exactly what we already covered. So that first statement, you can just say, in the same line, print this if this condition is satisfied, favorite musician is Taylor Swift. Otherwise, can you even be trusted?
You got another question too, Brant, when you get a chance. There's two of them.
Yeah. Can you have multiple elifs in one statement? You can. You can have infinite number of elifs. Does the coding for if-else clause involve tab-like Python? It does not. Can you explain elif again? Yeah, for sure. So let's get this back up. So basically, in a big if-elif statement, it's kind of like waterfall logic. You can think of it. So we're starting at the top. In our statement, we're saying this is basically the order of preference that you want things, logic, and things to display to happen, right? So we're saying, like, please, Taylor Swift, if that exists, or if my musician equals Taylor Swift, we're going to display what up, Swifty, and then we're going to check if this condition is not satisfied, that is, my musician does not equal Taylor Swift, then we'll display, then we'll check this next bit of logic and we'll display this next string, and it'll keep going, right? So if I keep doing this, that was a question, how many can you do? So I'm just pasting this in a few more times. And let's change the strings a little bit. And I'll say this is Nickelback 1, this is Nickelback 2. And let's change my musician here to Nickelback 2. So now you can see this is displaying here. So this if statement, elif statement, it's just going to kind of run down waterfall style and check if these conditions are met until it finds one. And when it does find one, it's going to execute what's ever wrapped within that elif. And here we're just displaying a jumble of letters. And then, if you have an else in your if elif else statement, then, and none of these conditions are satisfied, then it's going to hit the else here at the end. All right, for loops. For loops are helpful when you're displaying a list or wanting to cleanly display repetitive code. So I have some really simple for loops here. And I think from at a basis, it is kind of this simple, displaying a complex template like you see here on the right, with just a few for loops. And we'll kind of build up to thinking about how you might approach a template like this. Here in this template on the right, there's essentially 2 for loops. You have one here at the top that is looping over this kind of card here 5 times, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then down here, same thing. You have a card that's looping through 4 times. I love the example. Thanks, Liz. This is a good one. This is a perfect teachers pay teachers. For those that don't know, it's a huge marketplace for teachers selling their PDF courses to other teachers, and they have something like 10 million SKUs in their catalog. So the huge advantage of using for loops, they use them a bunch to display the right kind of items to the users. And like I said, it's a way to do code really cleanly without kind of repeating code over and over again. So we'll work up to this. We'll show you some really simple basics with for loops, and then we'll add in some filters into those and show you how you might think about working up to this kind of example. All right, so a simple for loop is going to look like this. Once again, I'm not relying on my YAML. I'm just defining it here. So what I'm defining here is a list. I'm creating a variable called sum_artist, and I'm defining a list of 3 bands, Journey, Bon Iver, and The Killers. Now I'm going to, in my for loop, target this variable. I do that here. I'm saying for artist in some artist. Again, this is just very like natural language, right? You can even kind of think about this. What am I trying to do? For every artist in my variable some artist, display artist, and the result I get here in my render is exactly how I think it would, just kind of saying it in natural language. You can think of artist here as just kind of a temporary variable that you're going to use within your for loop. I named it artist because I like kind of working in natural language, but you could just call this I. And actually, let's go back. So now that I've done that, this isn't rendering anything anymore, right? Because this variable no longer exists, artist. If I change that to I, now I'm back to displaying those 3 artists here. So this is just a temporary variable that you're defining yourself on the fly that you're going to use within your for loop. Again, I like using kind of things that are intuitive and natural language, but you can really use whatever. I know some people just like keeping it as few characters as possible. Does the naming of the variable happen when you reference it? You don't have to define it separately first. Reagan, is that are you talking about the variable some artist or the temporary one that we create in the for loop?
Talk about artist.
Artist, yeah. Okay, yeah, you have to declare the variable in your for statement. So I don't think there's any downside, actually don't know, of saying like set artist equals 1. Yeah, there's no downside. You can, there's no reason to. I'm not doing anything, but essentially when you start a for loop, I think basically what I'm testing in this render is your as soon as you create this temporary variable in your for statement, it's going to be referencing that in your for loop, essentially. All right, accessing object data nested in a list. So this is maybe a little advanced for where we're at so far in this lesson plan. But basically, you can have more complex data structures. Here, if you look at, I'm accessing the variable contact.artistRex. And if I look at that in my YAML, it is a little bit more complicated, right? Within this, I have nested a few variables, the name of the artist and their top albums. And then within top albums, I have 3 top albums listed there. So you could call this an object, essentially. Within artist recs, you can see all these dashes here. There's basically 6 objects nested within artist recs. And so we're taking this for statement a little bit further. So once again, we're saying for artist in contact.artist recs, and we're basically doing the same thing prior, except we're actually specifying a variable nested within artist recs, in this case, name. So here in my render, I see 6 names that are displaying here. If I just left it artist, you can see all of those objects displayed in kind of a messy format here. So, which is fine, but it just kind of tells you that you need to have a little bit more specificity with what you're trying to target here. I hope that made sense. The reason why I set up kind of this complicated value here is because I also want to show you that you can loop within loops, and this comes up from time to time. So same thing here. We're just think in terms of natural language. We're saying for artist in contact.artist recs, display the artist name, and then let's take this loop a bit further, because I know I still have this is my value here for artist. So I still have yet another list of items here, of top items. So I can continue with this for loop and have a for loop within my for loop. So here I can say for album in artist top albums, display the album and for, and then I still have to close out my original for loop with another and for. So here you can see I've displayed Aretha Franklin, and I've displayed her 3 albums. And if I scroll through my render, I can see that happening for all of my artists and all of their albums listed in the YAML. Tyler asks, how does it pick up artist name when the value just says name under artist recs? Yeah, that's a good question. Yeah. So if you look at the syntax here, artist.name, it actually is the right specificity, right? So again, we're saying we're targeting contact.artistrecs, contact.artistrecs. We're creating a temporary variable artist, and that's going to represent this object over and over again, whatever's nested within there. And again, artist is just a temporary variable, and then we're targeting name, so you can see that here. So you can kind of drill it down 3 levels there, right? So we have, again, contact, boom, artist recs, boom, and then name, boom. Carly, what if you want to limit the total number of artists and or albums that display? Yeah, good question. We're going to get to that in a second. That's a really good question. Liz, will you cover any data manipulation like format or splicing? Yes, we will. We'll cover that in a few slides. That'll go over filters. Yeah. Okay, cool. Actually, that's the next slide. Okay, so filters. We'll come back to for loops. What we're going to do is we're going to cover filters, and then we'll do some final examples that will kind of tie everything together: filters, if statements, and filters. So hopefully that kind of ties together all of these concepts. All right, so filters, you need filters to do data manipulation, as Liz asked. And it's going to come up for sure in what you need. Like we mentioned in kind of the earliest slides, you obviously don't always have a lot of control of the data being passed to your lifecycle marketing tool. So these filters are really important because you might need to do some last minute manipulation to the data that you have handed to you. Filters, I think, are pretty intuitive syntax. So we have contact name. We're accessing this value here, John Doe. And when you add on a filter, you're just going to insert the pipe symbol, and then you're going to write what filter you want to use. So here we're saying upper. In this case, it's just going to uppercase John Doe, just like you see. There are a lot of filters. Let's pull that up for a second. And we'll share out this presentation after the call, so you have access to all of this. Here I'm on the official Jinja documentation site. And you can see there's like 50 filters here available to use. There might even be more. We're not going to cover all 50 filters. So, if you get really into this sort of thing, I encourage you to come onto the site and kind of geek out and take a look at all the things you can do with filters for sure. I'll cover a few things that come up from time to time, just kind of give you a little feel for what is possible. Okay, so we've gone over two things here, right? So there's just contact name, and then I'm adding on a filter. So there's going to be some filters that accept arguments and some that do not. So this one, there's no arguments being made. What is an argument? This will make sense in this next one. If I type in a replace function and I'm saying replace filter, and then my arguments are replace John with Jane. So now I'm displaying John Doe, uppercase John Doe here, and then finally Jane Doe, because I'm telling Jinja to please replace instances of John with Jane. How can you know what filters use arguments and which do not? You just kind of have to memorize them. So this is going to be really helpful to dig through this documentation and get a feel. They're going to be pretty good here, right, of explaining whether there are going to be arguments or not. This documentation might look intimidating to some folks. I'll show at the end. Simon Data also has their own documentation, right, that is probably a little bit more user-friendly than this, and you'll get a good feel for which filters are using arguments and which are not with practice over that. Can you uppercase just the first letter of each word? I think you can. I can't remember. It might be just capitalized. Yeah, there you go. So the downside of that is you can see it, right? So my initial name is John Doe, first name and last name capitalized. Using capitalized will force the first letter to be capitalized, and then it'll lowercase everything else. So be wary of that kind of filter for sure. Cool. Patrick pointed out he uses replace a lot to kind of format some numbers. That's a good use case for sure. Yep.
I'll put his answer in the chat so everyone can see it too.
Integer. LaDonna, how can you capitalize a name like DD? Are you, LaDonna, can you reiterate a little bit? So is it in a different format to start?
Be posted. I think she's looking to see how you can capitalize both the D and the D in a single name. So the first name would be D.
Oh, I see. Yeah. Good question. I'm not going to do that on the fly, but one approach would be basically splitting this out so that into two variables where you have John and then you have Doe, and you can do that with Jinja, and then capitalize both. Yeah, that makes sense. Thanks for clarifying, Devin. All right, so some filters that we use often, replace, truncate, join, and round. So truncate, that's going to be pretty straightforward, right? So I'm setting a variable here, and if I just display that variable, it's this lengthy text. Maybe your email doesn't allow for that much text. And if I insert a truncate, and this wants an argument, and I say, just give me 50 characters, it's going to truncate this paragraph down to just 50 characters. Next good example is join. So this comes up from time to time. Maybe you're setting a bunch of UTM campaign values, and you're just kind of doing it at the top of your email. When you actually write out your URLs, you can just use join and the and symbol, and it'll stitch together all the UTM parameters that we've defined here. You don't have to do it like this. You could just kind of write this out manually, but if you like kind of the cleanliness of something like this, it's certainly an approach for sure. All right, and then rounds. This doesn't come up that much, but I wanted to highlight that you can manipulate numbers, integers, and floats. I saw a little bit of discussion in chat around forcing things into an integer versus a float, etc. Sometimes you have that flexibility, sometimes you don't. We're not going to go over data types in today's presentation, but keep in mind, you might need to use a variety of filters to get kind of the number format you want, depending on the kind of data type you might be working in. All right, so putting it all together, hopefully, Liz, this kind of gets at some of the questions you had earlier. So filters and expressions in a loop. So we already covered how to display in a for loop. So this is the exact same thing we went over earlier, where we're displaying the artist, and then we're displaying their albums in the artist. Now you can start combining some if statements and some filters that we just covered earlier. So that's what I'm going to do here. So I'm going to insert if artist name, and this is basically grabbing the first letter. It's splitting my string and just saying, give me the first letter. And then I'm forcing it into a lower case, and I'm saying under case B. So if you satisfy this, if the artist name starts with a B, then we're going to display here. So we just went from that list of 6 artists and all their albums, and now we're just displaying 2. Okay, using loop variables. So Jinja, they create these variables when you create a for loop. That's the loop index is kind of the main one here. So every time your for loop iterates that's kind of the index number. So the first iteration in your loop, that's 1, second iteration is 2, third 3, etc., etc. So here I'm saying just give me loop index equals 1. So you can see that now underneath each artist, I'm just displaying 1 album here. And I can also just display 1 album. I can make this 2. Now it's just displaying the second iteration of my loop. And if I come in here in my YAML, that matches up with how you think it would, right? In the prior example, it was displaying I never loved a man the way I love you. And now the second example, I see Lady Soul here in my render. I can also do a little bit more math here, right? So I have loop index greater to or less than or equal to 2. So now I'm displaying 2 albums. Stefan asked, what does the minus character do in your Jinja code? So the dash controls for white space. We'll cover that just briefly. here. The reason why I'm doing it is so that you can kind of see this clearly. So if I got rid of all of my dashes, my render is just getting a little bit harder to read. You can see all this white space getting introduced. So that's all I'm doing. I haven't covered that yet. I know it looks like an important symbol. It kind of is, but there's not much to it. We'll cover that in a second. Okay, loop index, you can do some kind of logic operators here. So you can say, hey, if loop index is even, do uppercase, otherwise do it lower. So so if you think about this, so my loop index here is going to be odd. This is 1, this is 2, and this is 3. Once again, odd. So if it's even, it's going to display uppercase. If it's lower, or if it's odd, it's going to display lower. Kind of a silly example, but you can think this does come up from time to time. If I go back to this example here, and you think about displaying cards on the left or right, that's essentially what we're doing there, right? Is we're saying, hey, if the card is odd, please display it. If the loop index is odd, please display my card on the left. If the loop index is even, please display it on the right. All right, and then finally is sort. So here I've got a filter sort that's requiring arguments, and I'm saying for the attribute name, I want you to sort by that. And I have this additional argument, reverse false. We'll cover that in a second. But you can see here now everything is alphabetical. Without this filter, it's just displaying data as ranked already in my backend. So you can see it here. With the filter, it's going to reorder everything alphabetically. Reverse equals false. I think you can guess what happens when you move it to true. It's going to go backwards, right? So now I have Yo-Yo Ma at the top and Aretha Franklin at the bottom. So that's kind of putting it all together, this section. If you think about coming back to this teachers pay teachers emails, they're probably doing a lot of things here, right? They're probably using some of those loop indexes to display things left or right. They're probably doing some filtering. Maybe they want to make sure there's a certain number of reviews for each of these in order to display them in the card. Maybe they're filtering out ratings, or maybe they're sorting by ratings, and they want, you know, five-star ratings at the top, and then move down lower as you go through it. So I hope I've showed just a few controls that you can use to get complex layouts like this in a really nice, clean, fast manner. Anonymous, can these be used with event data? So I think that's a question specific to Simon data. Yes, for sure. Yeah, you can use all of this Jinja markup for event data. And I think that's a good use case, actually. A lot of times the event data that is coming into Simon data or any lifecycle marketing tool is maybe a little funky, and you really need to manipulate what's coming in. So I think Jinja is a great language to sort of control all that data the way that you need to. All right, finally, white space control. I think we've kind of already covered this. So you can see here, we're going back to our simple loop, Journey, Bon Iver, the Killers, and it's displaying it like this with just like a ton of white space, and just implementing a few dashes. It's looking much cleaner now, right? So I encourage everybody to kind of play around with this a little bit, and you can see the effects of inserting these. This comes up a bit, right? Because there's going to be some use cases where your HTML is kind of handling that white space just fine. And if this was displaying within like a paragraph element in your HTML, I'd have to think about how that's displaying. It's probably not like this. Keep that in mind. You're going to have to kind of play around a little bit with your HTML and just kind of learn and see. Can we get these code snippets for practice? Yes, for sure. We'll follow up with this presentation after the call. So this will all be available to you for sure. Is there a specific place where dashes should be? Good question. Yeah, they should. Yeah, so you're always going to have to, it's going to need to be the next character or the character before your in print statements, your double curly braces, and then after your percentage sign for any statements like that. So just those two spots. Stefan, at what point the Jinja code will be rendered in a Simon mail? Good question. It's happening in Simon data. So when you hit send, basically on your emails, I would imagine what happens next is Simon data takes all the values they have stored in your database, and then they match it with your template, and then they merge those, and it goes off to your user. So I know for some of our clients, some of their send outs might take hours if it's going out to 50 million users and there's quite a bit of personalization happening in that template. That's probably what's taking a couple of hours, right? It's just processing all that Jinja, making sure the data from the back end is going out to the right user in the way that you're specifying in your templating. I've seen that come up, that question. It's a good one. Some people are wondering if the Jinja gets passed over to like Gmail and Gmail's rendering the Jinja. It's not the case. Patrick, where is the best place to store all these snippets for a quick copy paste? Will any of the formatting break if we copy from a shared Word Google Doc? I think this presentation is pretty nice. Google Docs should work fine, although code snippets kind of look funny in there. I like using Notion here at Scalero, where they have kind of these code boxes like this. You could always put it into a code editor on your desktop as well. I'm sure that would work fine. You could probably even store these in your own Simon data instance. Just create a dummy template. Name it something clear and paste these in and just kind of always have these as documentation. I like doing that quite a bit, actually. We'll do that at Scalero. We'll create a template. We'll call it documentation something. We'll write out all of our logic, and then we'll pass off the content. We'll pass off the template to an HTML developer, and then the HTML developer can kind of piece everything together. It's a nice way of working for sure. Just want to confirm in Simon, Jinja can only reference contact event and object data, but not something like segment membership. It depends. If you make segment membership a variable, I don't know if that's possible, but let's say you did. It's kind of outside the scope of this plan, but let's say you created a data set that was able to check what segments everybody was in. Then you'd be able to access that variable while creating content, and you would maybe see something like that for sure. And you could use all these tricks to display that nicely in your for loops in a nice way. Is there any randomization filter? Yes, there is. Yeah, random. So the way you would do that is, there might be a couple of ways to doing this. The way I've seen it come up the most is basically assign a random integer to each of these items, and then kind of order by that random integer. And so that's one way of doing it. I wonder. Yeah, there's a couple of ways of doing this. I'm not going to be able to show live here on the call. Happy to follow up on that one and the specific use case after the call for sure. All right, I know we have 2 minutes here. Okay, so there's 2 slides. Let me get to the last one first, and then I'll come to the last, to the second to last. So further resources, I'll send out this deck after the call. Jinja's official documentation is linked here. Simon Data has their own Jinja documentation. Some of you might find that a little bit more user-friendly. They also have some advanced snippet examples that are kind of complex and cover some of the things that we did today. I have to say it, ChatGPT is fantastic at this kind of stuff. I think Jinja is not super complex code. So ChatGPT is quite good at this. You know, if you just kind of speak to it in natural language, hey, I'm trying to write a for loop. Here's my variables. Here's what I'm trying to do. It's pretty good at outputting good Jinja. I don't find it cheating. I think it's going to help you in your Jinja skills for sure over time. I've also linked the playground here, so you can always come back here if you want to play around with Jinja outside of Simon Data in your own Simon Data instance. That's available here. As far as best practices, we're not going to be able to cover all of these. Here's some things we like to do. I'll just say them out loud. So we like to create dictionaries to keep template clean. Basically what that is we like making all of our definitions at the top of the template, so that when you actually get into displaying your variables throughout your template, your template's pretty clean, and you can just kind of focus on the HTML because you've done all your logic up top. That might make sense to some people on this call. Use blocks for consistency. Jinja has this feature essentially where you can reference another template in your template. Simon Data has this broken out with blocks and templates. So if you create a block, you can use that block into your template. It's really nice for consistency. It also keeps your template code really clean, getting all the messy stuff out of your template. I like using blocks for non-email actions as well. So if you've ever set up a webhook or an SMS action, sometimes those like little boxes, the key value pairs are kind of messy and it's hard to tell what's going on. And the content editor in Simon Data is quite nice, right? So I like doing a lot of my logic here in a content block, saving it. And then when I'm setting up a flow action, I like just referencing that block. It'll make it really nice and clean. Final thing is Simon Data has a few custom filters in their system. Probably the most useful is the skip action one. Basically, when you print this variable skip action, you're instructing Simon Data to suppress the action, suppress the send. So in this example here, if your favorite musician is not Taylor Swift, you're going to hit the else branch. And in this else branch, we're going to skip the action, no email for non-Swifties. So this comes up, right? Sometimes you have content that is beyond what you're able to segment for. A good example is is actually our first example we showed, where we were referencing products in a product catalog, and you can't segment for that. So if there's no product to display in the email, you obviously don't want it to go out. So you can have this fallback action, skip action that you print, where you're saying, please suppress this last minute if my conditions are not satisfied here. I don't want somebody getting an email without a product in the email. All right, that's it. We're 2 minutes over time. Thanks all. Thanks for listening to me talk for an hour.
Appreciate it. We will follow up with the recording and also the deck afterwards as well. And then if any of you have any additional questions, feel free to reach out to your CS or SAM and say, hey, I'd like to talk to Brant over at Scalera about some Jinja capabilities, and he will gladly help. Thank you all so much. Really appreciate the time today, and have a great weekend.